imagine buying a house, right? You move your family in, and then you discover that the previous owner just sort of slapped some fresh drywall over massive structural fire damage.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a terrifying thought.
It really is. But, I mean, welcome to Auto News Talk, because we're looking at how that exact scenario is basically playing out across the entire automotive landscape.
Yeah, it's a massive stress test on the whole invisible architecture of the industry.
Right, because the foundation of trust between buyers, sellers, and manufacturers is just cracking under immense pressure.
Exactly. We're talking about the overarching systems that hold everything together. So from the integrity of the data tracking a vehicle's history, all the way to localized battles inside franchise dealerships, and even up to the global assembly lines.
Yeah, and on Auto News Talk, we try to map out that terrain for you so you can see how these seemingly isolated events are actually deeply connected. And to really understand the pressures the industry is under, the most logical place to start is, well, at the end of the line.
The used car lot.
Exactly, the used car lot. Because that is where the foundational layer of consumer confidence is showing the most, the most serious fractures.
Well, if you look at the Solera Cap HPI report, you get a really stark picture of just how vulnerable that foundation is. They've been running these comprehensive incident history checks.
Okay, so what exactly are they checking?
Basically, what they're doing is cross-referencing Auditex claims, and that's the primary risk and asset management software that insurers use to value damage. They're crossing that with back-end data from major salvage operators.
Okay, so they're essentially acting like forensic data auditors for the whole used vehicle market.
That's a perfect way to put it, and the numbers they uncovered are honestly staggering. According to the Solera report, out of the accident-damaged cases they reviewed, more than 25% were completely missing the expected write-off or salvage markers.
Wait, really? Over a quarter of them?
Over a quarter. So you have flagged, heavily damaged vehicles with an official record that looked absolutely pristine.
I mean, think about the ripple effect of that.
Oh, it's massive. And to understand why this happens, you have to look at the human vulnerabilities within these centralized databases. The report highlights a specific context involving a former driver and vehicle licensing agency employee.
A DVLA employee?
Yeah, an employee who manipulated records to hide these write-offs. Someone with administrative access was actively washing titles.
Which completely subverts the market. I mean, washing a title means a car that structurally belongs in a scrapyard gets its salvage marker erased, and suddenly it's sitting on a retail lot commanding top dollar.
Right, and the buyer is taking on immense physical risk.
Exactly. The buyer takes the physical risk, the bank is underwriting a fraudulent loan, and the insurance company is totally blind to the liability. It's a mess.
It really is. But the good news is Solera Cap HPI is using this incident history data to catch these discrepancies, and they're actively correcting them centrally on the Motor Insurers Bureau's Navigate platform.
So they're building a safety net for buyers.
Yeah, it's a necessary intervention. But reading through the Solera data, a massive blind spot remains.
What's the catch?
Well, the report gives us that alarming 25% figure for the cases they reviewed. But what it doesn't answer is the total volume of the problem across the broader market.
Ah, so we don't know the actual scale.
Exactly. We don't know exactly how many total cases were audited or which specific vehicle segments are taking the brunt of this manipulation. The true scale is a total unknown.
And, that fractured trust isn't just a consumer-level problem. If you zoom out and look at the retail operations, like the dealerships actually selling these vehicles, they're fighting massive existential battles of their own.
Oh, definitely. Dealerships are having to act less like local community businesses and more like massive corporate holding companies just to absorb the legal shockwaves hitting them.
Right. And the car dealership guy's weekly auto retail briefing provides an excellent lens into this dynamic. The briefing tracks the pulse of auto retail, and it highlights two massive forces reshaping the landscape simultaneously.
Intense Federal Trade Commission scrutiny on business practices and rapid, heavy market consolidation.
Yes. You're seeing large groups expanding aggressively, like the briefing mentions Auto Gallery making its first strategic acquisition up in Michigan.
Which makes sense because consolidating resources is almost the only way to build a legal and compliance moat big enough to survive all this FTC scrutiny.
Exactly.
Right.
But the detail from the car dealership guy briefing that really stands out to me is the internal friction. I mean, the tension between the dealers and the automakers themselves.
Right, the lawsuit.
Yes. The report notes that a New York dealer has filed a massive $15 million lawsuit against General Motors.
Which is huge. A single dealer launching a $15 million suit against their own primary manufacturer. That just signals a severe breakdown in the traditional franchise system.
They're feeling the squeeze from every direction, right?
Absolutely. The manufacturers are attempting to exert more control over inventory allocation, direct-to-consumer sales models are threatening dealer margins, and like we said, the regulatory environment is just unforgiving.
Here's my frustration with that briefing, though. It gives us the staggering $15 million figure and points to the tension, but what it leaves completely unanswered are the granular details of exactly why this suit was filed against GM.
Yeah, the catalyst is basically a black box.
Right. We don't know if this was a dispute over facility upgrade mandates or a breakdown in inventory allocation, or maybe a disagreement over warranty reimbursement rates.
We just don't know. But while the specifics of that lawsuit might be sealed behind closed doors, the broader symptom is undeniable. The basic operational rulebook for dealerships is being torn up.
Which makes me wonder if dealers are just fighting administrative friction, or if the actual underlying business model is under threat from lawmakers.
Well, if you listen to the National Automobile Dealers Association podcast, the NYAR podcast, they dive deep into the Washington policy fights that are actively threatening to reshape service lanes and sales floors across the country.
The NA podcast paints a picture of a multi-front war.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about strict FTC advertising enforcement, ongoing legislative battles over right to repair access, and even mobilizing federal resources to deal with organized catalytic converter theft rings.
I mean, these are not minor operational headaches.
No, not at all. These are policies that fundamentally alter profitability.
Let's look at the mechanics of one specific push highlighted in the NAD podcast. The American Truck Dealers, or ATD, are actively lobbying to repeal the federal excise tax on heavy trucks.
Right, and to understand the economic math there, you really have to realize that heavy commercial trucks are massive capital investment.
Massive.
So when the federal government tacks on a heavy excise tax right at the point of sale, it creates a huge financial penalty for upgrading. It actively incentivizes fleet owners to just keep their older, less efficient, and, quite frankly, potentially less safe diesel trucks on the road far longer than they should.
Because maintaining an old truck is cheaper than paying the tax penalty on a new one.
Exactly. Repealing that tax would theoretically modernize commercial fleets almost overnight.
Which completely changes the revenue model for commercial service lanes at these dealerships.
It really does. But, the gap in the NEDA update is the timeline. We know the battle's being fought on Capitol Hill, but what the source doesn't give us is any concrete timeline for when these Washington proposals will actually become active law.
Dealerships are essentially operating in regulatory limbo.
Yeah, and that regulatory limbo extends right into the service bay, especially when you look at the right to repair debate. Independent shops and dealers are fighting for access to diagnostic data to fix vehicles.
But the assumption there is that the manufacturer's own prescribed fix actually works.
Right, and when the manufacturer's fix fails, the consequences are disastrous. I mean, the Ford recall notice provides a terrifying example of administrative errors turning into literal life and safety hazards.
Oh, the Ford situation is wild. Ford had to reopen a previous major recall campaign because of a catastrophic data tracking failure in their own system.
And the mechanical issue itself is serious. The Ford source points out that 255,404 Focus sedans and hatchbacks from a specific older generation are affected by a faulty canister purge valve, or CPV.
And anyone wrenching on these cars knows a stuck-open CPV creates a massive vacuum leak.
Yeah, it throws everything off.
Right, so the powertrain control module, the PCM, is designed to catch that leak and compensate to keep the engine running. But in this case, the PCM was totally blind to the leak. It was throwing off the air-fuel ratio until the engine just died at highway speeds.
Which is incredibly dangerous. So the original recall was supposed to deploy a digital fix for that physical valve problem. Dealerships were instructed to flash the PCM with updated software that would teach the computer to recognize the stuck valve and prevent the stall.
But here is where the data integrity failure comes roaring back. Ford discovered that some of these vehicles were mistakenly marked in their centralized tracking systems as repaired.
Even though the required software flash was never actually installed.
Yes, so you had drivers out there who checked their VIN, saw a green check mark indicating their car had the updated software, and they were driving a vehicle that could stall out at 60 miles an hour without warning.
It's the exact same underlying vulnerability we saw in the Solera report. Bad data in a centralized system carries real-world physical consequences.
It proves that automated systems are only as reliable as the inputs.
Exactly. And the Ford recall notice states that owners can get reimbursed if they paid for related repairs out of pocket, but the glaring omission is the root cause.
Right. How did it happen?
Yeah, what the source absolutely doesn't answer is exactly how 250,000 vehicles were mistakenly marked as repaired in the first place. Was it a fundamental flaw in the dealership diagnostic software? Was it human error at the technician level? Or a massive synchronization failure at the corporate level?
We just don't know. And, if the domestic market is bogged down in $15 million dealer lawsuits, FTC regulatory battles, and massive software data failures, how are the actual builders navigating all this chaos?
The global suppliers.
Yeah, the ones actually building the cars.
Well, to see how the builders are maneuvering, you have to look at the Magna CEO's strategy. Magna is an absolute giant. They're not just stamping outside mirrors. They do comprehensive contract vehicle assembly for other brands.
And the CEO strategy is heavily focused on integrating with fast-moving Chinese automakers on a global scale.
Yes, but they are demanding intense policy visibility before they commit capital. The detail that stood out to me from the Magna source is their focus on the USMCA framework.
The agreement that dictates whether parts moving across the United States, Mexico, and Canada borders get hit with massive tariffs.
Exactly. Magna maintains a strict, unyielding boundary. They maintain a firm stance of no contract vehicle assembly in North America unless there are long-term, multi-customer conditions met.
Wow. That is a stunning vote of no confidence in the stability of the North American regulatory environment.
It really is. Setting up a contract assembly plant requires billions in capital investment over decades. If trade rules and tariffs can be rewritten on a whim, the math simply does not work for a Tier 1 supplier.
So they're allocating their resources where the momentum is. Magna is happily assembling Chinese XPeng vehicles in Graz, Austria instead.
They're following the path of least resistance. And they aren't just building cars for XPeng, they are studying them.
Right, because the Chinese development cycle is fundamentally different. They do not have the legacy constraints of Western automakers, their software integration is tighter, and they iterate incredibly fast.
And the Magna CEO explicitly notes that they are adopting, and this is a, quote, non-confidential process learnings from these Chinese manufacturers.
Non-confidential process learnings.
Yeah.
That is a masterful piece of corporate diplomacy right there.
Oh, absolutely. Magna wants to learn how to move at that speed. They're absorbing the culture of rapid development and vertical integration to survive the next era of manufacturing.
It proves that unpredictable domestic trade policies directly restrict local manufacturing capacity while pushing legacy suppliers to look overseas for innovation.
Definitely. But what the source doesn't answer is exactly which engineering secrets or specific operational processes Magna is actually lifting.
Right. The mechanics of that knowledge transfer are left totally vague. Are they copying battery integration techniques? Software architecture? We don't know the specifics.
No, we don't. But, when we step back and overlay all these sources, the broader architecture of this industry-wide stress test really comes into focus.
So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together?
Well, 3 undeniable themes emerge. First is the absolute critical need for data integrity. We saw this with Solera Cap HPI having to build an advanced forensic system just to catch hidden write-offs manipulated by a corrupt official.
And we saw it with Ford realizing its internal recall tracking system falsely cleared unsafe vehicles.
Exactly. You cannot build the future of mobility on a foundation of broken spreadsheets and manipulated records.
What's the second theme?
The second theme is that regulatory friction is the new normal. The car dealership guys report on heavy FTC scrutiny, and the $15 million dealer lawsuit perfectly mirrors the legislative battles NADA is fighting in Washington over the heavy truck tax and advertising enforcement.
The friction between the state, the manufacturer, and the dealer is just at an all-time high.
It really is. And the third theme is the unignorable gravity of Chinese automotive manufacturing. The NADA podcast highlights how domestic dealers are bracing for shifting tariff policies, while a global powerhouse like Magna is actively partnering with Chinese brands like XPeng in Europe just to learn their development speeds and remain competitive.
And, those themes create some intense contradictions in the market. Just look at the tension between protectionism and pragmatism.
Oh, definitely.
NADA is focused on local market protection and dealing with trade restrictions, while Magna explicitly avoids North American assembly without ironclad guarantees, choosing pragmatic partnerships with Chinese manufacturers overseas instead.
There's also the tension between automated systems and human error. Ford relied on an automated software tracking system that fundamentally failed to flag a critical safety issue.
Right, and meanwhile, Solera had to build a highly advanced automated incident history system just to catch the deliberate human error of a single corrupt official.
Technology is acting as both the liability and the safeguard.
Which brings us to the most practical takeaway for anyone listening. When you look at all these moving parts, the localized legal fights, the date failures, the global chess moves by suppliers, the bottom line is that passive ownership is completely dead.
Absolutely. You have to be your own ultimate advocate, whether you are manually verifying your VIN to ensure a manufacturer's software update was actually installed, like with Ford, or checking the Motor Insurance Bureau Navigate platform to ensure that pristine-looking used car doesn't have a hidden salvage history. You just cannot assume the system is inherently protecting you.
The guardrails are under immense strain.
They really are.
Well, that's going to do it for this segment of Auto News Talk. The automotive world is rewriting its own rulebook right now, from the software in your engine to the trade deals across the ocean. Make sure you're reading the fine print.
Keep an eye on how these Washington policy fights develop, and always double-check your vehicle's history.
You never know what might be hiding under a fresh coat of paint. Keep questioning the systems you rely on, and we will catch you next time on Auto News Talk.